thank you for coming to the November 13th school board meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. We would like to start with recognition, individual student growth.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November board meeting. This is a time of goodness and Thanksgiving, so I just want to take a moment. I know we're a small crowd tonight, but I just thank parents, coaches, community members, grandparents, everyone who works with our students to make them successful. So thank you all for all that you do. We are going to start this evening with Central 9, our Central 9 students of the month. If we have with us Alyssa Bernard or Mason Herbert, please come forward. These are Central 9 students of the month in culinary arts. Miles Brandt in welding technology. David Sanchez Hensley in cybersecurity. And Andy Swartz in early childhood education. Well, they are not with us, but please join me in a round of applause to congratulate them for their good work. Thank you. If Cameron Schofield would go ahead and please come forward. Cameron Schofield is an 8th grade student who was the runner-up at the Brian Keck Memorial Preseason National Wrestling Tournament in Iowa this fall. Cameron earned 2nd place out of a 42-man bracket. Congratulations, Cameron. Please join me in a round of applause.
So who's with you tonight, Cameron?
My mom and dad and Coach Kyle.
Talk a little bit about the tournament. How many matches did you compete in that day, and who did you compete in the last
I wrestled 5 matches, and my last match was in the finals against a kid from PA, and he was pretty tough. But.
I'd say you were pretty tough too, and we really know why you came for this. And everybody gets this pencil. It says, "Dr. Clendening thinks I'm sharp," and that's why you're here tonight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Here you go. We'll actually get a picture, and if your mom and dad will take a picture. What weight class?
83.
Coach, do you want to do this also?
Congratulations once again. Nice job. In addition to individual student growth, of our 5 guiding principles, that is the key guiding principle that we tend to focus on. But another that we want to highlight this evening is collaboration. So if Tamara Taylor or Letty Hall are with us this evening, please come forward. We would like to recognize the Crane Credit Union. Their team volunteered at the Cub Pantry located at CBIS, where they assisted Kim Sperling and Chelsea Fountain with different organization products, restocking, and other tasks. Crane Credit Union also donated $1,000 to CBIS toward their 5th grade field trip to J.A. Biztown. So please join me in thanking the Crane Credit Union team.
Chose us as the recipient of this year's $1,000 in volunteer hours?
Yes, so I'm proud to work for Crane Credit Union. I've been in banking for 33 years at various financial institutions, but what sets Crane aside is that we put our members and our community first, and so we love to be involved in the community and see the youth or any age grow, and if we can help along that way by volunteering our hours or having funds donated to help the community or help organizations, that's really where we start with.
Thank you very much for selecting us. You get a picture right here. thank everybody. And this is a good time if you want to exit out as we travel forward with the rest of the agenda. But we do want to say thank you for being here and congratulations for meeting one of our guiding principles.
Okay, we will move on to the consent agenda. Are there any public comments? Okay. We'll move to the administrative salaries.
I just have a couple comments. One, on the personnel, we've had a few people that are going to be leaving us, and we do want to say thank you to them. Doug Dickinson, after 26 years, is resigning as Director of Transportation from us. And I know that there are two others that. Cheryl Weedman, after 38 years of service at the high school, is retiring at the end of this year. And then Becky Zaire, who's Essential Skills teacher for us, after 36 years. So we want to say thank you to all three of them for their dedicated years of service. They'll be missed. We can always use substitutes, so if they do want to come back, please come back.
And Chair Nelson, if I might, there is a contract in the consent agenda for Edmentum. Edmentum is currently our parent company for Apex, which is an online platform that we use for credit recovery, summer school, and such at the high school. We are, and Mr. Ahaus will talk more about this here in a moment under superintendent's reports, but we are looking at investigating our virtual options and really a continuum of support and services for our students and our families in the community. Edmentum has another platform, a sister platform, if you will, to Apex called Courseware that allows us to offer CTE courses. We have not had that option in the past, and so it will open up doorways for students who are working on graduation pathways. So we're asking permission to pilot this platform in the spring, and that's the contract that's there in front of you for, it's a little under $4,000 to run that pilot for the spring.
We also have some salary schedules on the consent agenda. The adjunct teachers and mental health support team are the result of the CBA negotiations. Those salary schedules just get adjusted just like the teachers do. And then the behavioral technician is a new position for us. And this will require a BRT certification, RBT certification to handle some of our higher behavior students.
And just in letter O, just want to remind everyone that Senate Enrolled Act 342 does require us to vote separately on anyone that has something come back on their criminal history. You'll notice in this one is a 2005 operating while intoxicated, and that is one of the requirements. And so you'll note that that person is on here, and it does have to be voted on separately as we travel forward. So that's why it's not in the personnel packet.
Is that everything?
Yes.
Any questions from the board?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then we need to vote on the separate, is that correct?
Mr. Young, if we list it as a separate item, that suffices with the law. Is that
It
correct?
is, it does, yes.
So
You do not have to vote on it separately.
Okay,
It just has to be a distinct agenda item.
Thank you.
okay, we will move on to the superintendent reports. Enrollment projections for Franklin Community Schools. Ms.
All right, we have a guest speaker with us tonight, Mr. Matt Kinghorn from IU. If you recall, we contracted with this research group several months ago to do an enrollment study for us. We had done one with Dr. Brudvig but it did not go into the building detail that was needed to make good informed decisions. So we asked Mr. Kinghorn and his colleagues to update that and go a little deeper into the building level. So he will be presenting those findings to the board tonight.
Yeah, good evening. It's great to be with you all. We really enjoyed working with Tina and Dr. Clendenning on this analysis, and so I look forward to sharing our findings with you. Before I really get started, I want to keep this as conversational as possible. I think I have about 25 slides. Some of them I'll get through pretty quickly, but if you have any questions, just go ahead and stop me right as they come to mind, and we can kind of just do this, answer questions as we go along, hopefully. Before we get into the specific numbers for the schools, I just kind of wanted to take a kind of zoom out and give a bigger picture of kind of what are some of the key demographic trends going on in the FCS area and what really kind of affects the enrollment projections. First of all, I'm sure it's no surprise to you all that Johnson County as a whole, not just the FCS area, but Johnson County as a whole is one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And then when we focus in on the same is true for the population under the age of 18. And so what this graphic here is showing that between 2010 and 2022, Johnson County, the population under the age of 18 grew by about 8%. That's fifth highest in the state. And that is it's pretty unique. There's only suburban communities are seeing growth in the youth population right now. Most of the state as a whole is seeing a decline in the youth population. Most counties in the state, I believe it's, 76 of the state's 92 counties are seeing a decline in youth population. So this is something we're seeing not just in Indiana, we're seeing in lots of parts of the country, specifically in the Midwest and the Northeast. And so, you may have heard in your work here on the board, you may have heard things like enrollment cliff, and that's something a lot of school administrators at K-12 and in university level are worried about. And that's really kind of what we're seeing. But again, you're among the group of suburban counties that are kind of bucking that trend for now. So when we look at total population, Johnson County as a whole grew very, very quick, at a quick pace last decade, but that growth has slowed down here in the last couple of years, really since the pandemic. So you can look here, it's almost grew by about 2,000 residents per year last decade. That dropped to about 1,500 over the last couple of years. But in the FCS area, you actually saw an uptick in population growth over the last couple of years, and that has a lot to do with the surge in residential construction you've seen over the last few years. So that's kind of something that you're kind of swimming against the tide here in the county as far as a stronger rate of growth here over the last couple of years. But the total growth rate, though, as you can see, is still slower than the county as a whole. But again, that will impact enrollment going forward. So again, I mentioned the residential construction. So it's been picking up, as you know, here over the last few years. It's not quite as strong as maybe you saw before the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. Back then between 97 and 2005, you guys averaged about 220 new single-family units per year. Right now, over the last few years, it's more like about 160 per year. So it's still a lot more than you had seen maybe 5 to 10 years ago, but not as strong a growth as you had seen kind of pre-Great Recession of 08. Okay. Another kind of a key demographic trend, and one that I think is really going to play a big role in enrollment going forward, and it certainly is a big driver in our projections, is that there's been, not just here in Johnson County, but around the state and around the country, really a real sharp decline in fertility rates. And so that really obviously will impact kindergarten enrollments going forward. So, we talked about in Johnson County, it's been really strong growth over the last 10, 15, 20 years. But if we look here, this is the blue line there is the number of births. It's the population has grown and grown and grown, but the number of births in the county has pretty much flatlined since 2008 or so, since that Great Recession, which is when we saw fertility rates really peak and have been declining sharply since. And again, that's not just here in Johnson County, but around the state. The state fertility rate last year in Indiana was the lowest that we've seen on record, probably the lowest since World War II or so. And so it's really a sharp drop. And just to show what this can mean to your kindergarten enrollments going forward, if we just do kind of an alternative history or so, if you had the 2008 fertility rates had been in effect in 2020, you would have had about 420 births in the FCS area. But at the rates that were in effect at the time, the number is more closer to 360. So that's a 15% difference, or about 60 births. So that you can see what kind of an impact that these declining rates can have on kindergarten enrollments going forward. Okay, so now I just wanted to kind of dissect kind of enrollment change. You know, we always think about total enrollment change, but there's really kind of two major drivers. There's what I think of as migration into the county, and when we're looking at enrollment growth, we kind of think of that as cohort transitions. And so that's as, you know, first grade last year, say there's 100 first graders last year, and then this year there's 110 second graders, well then that cohort grew by 10 students. And so this is looking at, you know, the change last year. You know, the total enrollment in the FCS area declined by 40 students, but that cohort transition, the sum of all those transitions from one grade to the next, really has summed up to more, you know, almost 60 additional students. But where you lost enrollment is that change from the outgoing 12th grade class and the incoming kindergarten class. So if you see in 21-22, there's almost 430 seniors, and then the next year the incoming kindergarten class was about 100 students smaller than that outgoing 12th grade class. And so that was large enough to kind of overwhelm those cohort transition growth and to lead to an overall enrollment decline. And so again, that's something that's going to play a big role, and something that why this current residential construction boom might be a little bit different than the last one in terms of total enrollment change. Okay. And so this is just another way to look at that, and a way to see that this is kind of a maturing school district, is to look at that ratio of 12th graders to first graders. And so this is I apologize for that graphic, is a little squeezed there, but you know, kind of before the pandemic, there was a lot more kindergartners or first graders than there were seniors. And so that's why, you know, at its peak, there was about 17 first graders for every 10 seniors in high school. But now that has really flipped, and now there are regularly more seniors than there are first graders. And so we project that to pick up a little bit, whereas it becomes kind of more even, the number of first graders, the ratio of first graders to seniors, but not anywhere back to that where it was, say, back in the mid-aughts, where the younger grades were really fueling a lot of the growth. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about some of the key data inputs that we use in our projections. The biggest one, what we just talked about, are those cohort transitions, and so we gather 15 or 20 years worth of enrollment data by grade, and just look at what is typically those cohort transitions, and those kind of help to estimate, you know, net migration into the area by different age groups. Another one, a really important one, is residential building permits that we gather from all the relevant agencies, and so we gather that what the building trends have been recently, as well as what's still out to you know, number of units that they expect to be built in the next 5 to 10 years. And so we gather all that from the local planning departments. We also have what we call our own property parcel database. So we have all the residential units here in the FCS area, and we use that to estimate what we call enrollment multipliers. And so for each new unit that comes into that is built in the area, what does that mean in terms of enrollment impact? And so we'll dig more into those enrollment multipliers here in a minute. But that's really key to trying to understand, you know, a new subdivision, what's going to be the enrollment impact from that new subdivision. And then obviously we talked about births, and so we have historical data on births, and we project those births going forward. We've developed 3 projection scenarios. One is what we call the baseline scenario. And so it's relatively conservative birth projections, and also kind of just the cohort transition ratios that we've seen over the last 5 years or so. And that's so we could consider that kind of the baseline. We also have a higher growth scenario, which is a little bit higher, not much higher, but a little bit higher birth projection and slightly stronger cohort transitions from maybe some, from all that new residential development, maybe an uptick from that. We talked about, 160 units, what if we see that uptick to 190 to 200 per year. And then, what I got to looking at both of those, the baseline scenario and the higher growth scenario, I kind of was torn. I was like, if I'm thinking over the next couple of years, I think that baseline scenario is probably, the most dependable. So if you're thinking in terms of budgeting over the next couple of years or hiring or those sorts of things, the baseline scenario seems most plausible. But then if you're looking at facilities planning, 10 years, then higher growth seems more. And so our hybrid scenario kind of reflects that. It's in the first few years of the projection scenario, it's weighted more towards that baseline growth, and then as we go out further and further into the projection cycle, it begins to be weighted more towards the higher growth scenario. And so when I just show projection numbers and don't differentiate between whether this is baseline or higher or anything like that, then we're generally referencing the hybrid scenario in terms of growth. Okay, so this is just what we expect to see. We see our projection moving out 10 years to be anywhere between on the high end a little more than 5,300 students, on the low end right at about 5,000. So that would be a range of about 300, and so that hybrid scenario puts it at about 5,175. So right in the middle. So that's what we are expecting to see. And so that blue line is just the actual enrollment change you've seen since the late 90s. So obviously a big boom there from 96 up till about 2009 or so. Then really kind of slow decline in enrollment then, but since. But then we're expecting to see an uptick moving forward. If we break it down by the sort of building levels, the elementary level, we're looking at about a 17% increase, or about 300 students growth over the next 10 years. So this is by the 2033-34 year here. So for elementary students, we're projecting about 2,000 students, up from about a little more than 1,700 right now. So again, that's a 17% growth. For the intermediate school, about 10% growth. Middle school, about 7%, and then an actual decline in high school. And that's partly a product of the fact that the high school right now is your largest group. The four largest classes you have right now are 9 through 12. And so that's why I get larger now, but a little bit smaller 10 years from now. If we did this projection out 15 or 20 years, then some of that growth that you see in that elementary and intermediate school would filter down into the high school. And so it's not as if high school is just going to be declining. That's just kind of the snapshot 10 years from now for the high school. So this just looks at average annual change in the projections over the 2 5-year periods, and compares it to different periods you've seen in the past. So again, from 97 to 2006, you all grew by about 120 students per year. From 2007 to 2015, only grew by about 6 students per year. And then from 2016 to today, declined by about 15 students per year. So over the next 5 years, we're projecting basically about flat change, about 3 growth of 3 students per year. But then we start to see that more picking up more in the second half of the cycle. And again, a lot of that has to do with some of those larger cohorts now graduating over the next 4 or 5 years, and then you're seeing just a little more stability and growth from that residential construction. Again, if you think back to the one slide where I isolated things dissected between that K to 12 change, separating that from that cohort transition growth. Well, if we look at this, is just the sum of those cohort transitions. That first to second, second to third, and all that growth. And so if we look, you all grew by that 97 to 2006. You grew by 120 students per year, but the cohort transition growth was only about 24 students per year. So again, that was all driven by the large kindergarten enrollments. They were much larger than the exiting high school classes. And your cohort transition growth has really picked up since then. So you're seeing more and more growth through migration into the area. And so you see it here in 2016 to 2023, you're growing that cohort transition about 40 students per year. It would really be higher than that, except for the couple of years, the couple of stickiest years of the pandemic have really dragged that down. But there's been several years in the last few years where there's been 60 or 70 students growth through cohort transition. And so that's what we are projecting out, about over the next 5 years, where the total enrollment change is only about 3 students per year, but the cohort transition growth is about 70 students per year. But it's just those larger senior classes graduating out that suppresses the total change. And then even higher cohort transition growth on the second half of the projections. This is too much to get into now. This is just all the nitty-gritty, just grade by grade projection over the next 10 years. So again, this is, we have I have one of these for each scenario. This is the hybrid scenario, and we can just kind of skip the next two. There's one for the higher growth and for the baseline, and that'd just be for your reference if you want to really dig into the numbers and see that change grade by grade, year by year. Okay, but as Tina referenced, what we're most interested in is are the buildings. So what's going on building by building and at the elementary level. And so that's where we really dedicated a lot of our time. And again, so this residential development really drives that. And so that really was key to doing this analysis, was finding out, where have all the houses been built over the last few years, in which elementary school areas, and then what's coming down the pike, and in which areas will this be. Over the last 5 years or so, about 40% of new single-family units have been in the Creekside area, and then after that, about an even split between Needham and Northwood areas. But then if we, more recently, just in the last 18 months or so, since the start of 2022, it's been about 75% of all new units were in that Creekside area. And so that's obviously a lot of growth we see focused in there. And then, so that's what's been going on in the past. What's coming down the line, well, as you know, there's still a lot of development planned for the area, about 1,500 single-family units already right now proposed, planned, approved for development. And so this table just breaks out by each subdivision that we know of, and in parentheses which school, elementary school area they're in. But again, of that 1,500 new units, single-family units expected to come online, about 2/3 of those are going to be in either Creekside or in the Needham areas. Let's say there one in Union, another one in Webb, but again, mostly in Creekside and Needham. Okay, so in addition to those 1,500 units, there's also nearly another 1,000 apartment units expected to come on. And so, two of those, two big ones in Needham, one very large one expected in the Northwood area, another large one in the Union area. And so, apartments certainly can drive enrollment growth as well. There's not nearly the enrollment impact that you have from a single-family unit, but we'll dig into that here in just a second. Okay, so I talked about those enrollment multipliers, and again, when we get down to doing this building-by-building projections, that's really the key to making those projections. And so basically what we do is we just, through our analysis, are able to determine, what is the number of students per new unit. And so if we look, and then what also is important is what is the age of that housing unit. So this table here, if you go to the bottom of that first table there, from houses built in the last 5 years in the FCS area, they have every new single-family unit has an enrollment impact of about a half a student. So every 10 new units has 5 total students. If you break that down, that's about, of that 5, it's about 2 of them are elementary students, 3 of them are in 5th through 12th grade. But what's interesting is you go up that table there, it seems to, over the first 10 or 15 years of a house's life cycle, of a family's life cycle in that house, the enrollment impact actually grows. So in the first 5 years, it's about a 0.5 student impact. If we get from years 5 to 10 in that of a new house, that increases to 0.6. Years 10 to 15, 0.65, and and then it declines. Then as, you know, that's kind of the natural life cycle of the family as what we call aging in place. The enrollment impact of a house as that house ages declines, and so that's important. So as we say, well, what's the impact of all this new housing coming online? Well, we're not, at the same time we have to estimate that, but we also have to estimate, well, how many housing units are, you know, all those housing units, you know, built in the mid-aughts. They're going to be, their impact is going to be waning some as the newer units are coming on and having a larger impact. And so you have to, the analysis has to balance both of those facts. And that bottom table there is looking at apartment units. And so you can see it's about the impact of an apartment unit is about half that of a new single-family unit. And so, just one more second here. You know, and I think that, you know, about 0.3, so for every 10 units, 10 new multifamily units, about enrollment impact of about 3. I think that's probably a little high because for the new apartments that you have coming on, because a lot of that is driven by just a couple of larger and I'd say older apartment complexes in the area that really kind of drive that number up. But then when we looked at newer apartment communities in the area, the enrollment multiplier wasn't nearly as large as that. And so I would think that may be a little high. And so we cut that down just a little bit in our projections. Okay. So again, this is just a picture of what we looked at in that table. And this is common. You know, we do this for a lot of different school corporations, where you see where that enrollment impact starts off pretty large, but then enrollment impact grows and grows over the 10 or 15 years, and then begins to decline. This is pretty common that we see across a lot of school corporations we work in. Okay. And so, yeah. But then, so that was total enrollment. This is for elementary, and that's what we're most focused on, looking at building by building. And there isn't really that ramp-up period for elementary students. It pretty much you get that impact right off the bat, about 2 students for every 10 single-family units, and it stays that way for the next 10 or 15 years before then tailing off. So there's not that ramp-up period. It's just kind of pretty much the same for 10 or 15 years, and then it falls off after that. So that's kind of the key data points to go into this analysis. And so if we look at that building by building now, obviously the biggest, no surprise here, but the biggest increase, an increase of we're projecting 140 students, or about 30% in the Creekside area. Needham also growing, almost by more than 25%, or about 85 students over the next 10 years. We're seeing slower growth or less growth in the Northwood and Webb areas is what we're expecting, and then Union. Pretty good growth there as well. Increase of about 50 students we're expecting. And that's for the size of that school. That's a 30% increase there in the Union. And again, for the total all elementary schools, it's about 300 students, or 17% growth. Anybody have any questions on any of that? Basically, I have a slide for each school, and I can kind of hit the top line numbers for you all. But it's basically what we just talked about there. So like again, this is Creekside, and just shows for the first table. Just shows for each of the projection scenarios what we're projecting, and then for that hybrid scenario, just grade by grade and year by year. But again, so that's about 30% there for Creekside. Needham, again, about 80 students or so, about 25% growth over the next 10 years. Northwood, growth of about 25 students, or 5% over 5 years, or 10 years, I'm sorry. Again, yeah, that Union, again, up to about 210 students or so by 2033. That's a 32% increase. And the Webb is just basically staying, we expect to stay pretty much flat over this period here. So, then the intermediate school, 10% growth, or growth of about 75 students. The middle school, growth of 50 students, or 7% growth. And then we talked about earlier about the high school, where at least 10 years from now we're expecting to decline. But again, that 300 student growth in the elementary school, that will obviously be filtering through these other buildings
So I love the data. So when you think about the multipliers and the housing, so the curve that you have from year built 1996, so that peak, does that apply equally to our rural areas as well as in the Franklin city limits?
There is some variation, like in the Union area,
Right.
those multipliers were a little bit higher than we saw in some of the others. And so there is some variation there. But, most of that growth has been, the last 10 or 15 years, right, it's been in the Franklin area, right, though, so.
And what factors should we be aware of with this input that would cause this to go off track, in your mind?
Well, that at first would be, fertility rates would be one, if that were to change. If that were to, one could be if we saw, say, more immigration or so, that could certainly change things. Let's see, another one would be more infrastructure being built, coming through in the area. That could certainly be something in the Union area, something to consider. And another would be just, it seems like there's another, not something I really touched on here, but another is, it seems like there's another headwind is growing competition, right? Not just maybe from private schools, from surrounding areas, from homeschooling, from, I just use competition as a word there, but just, other options or opportunities. And so if say transfers were to turn around, or if maybe, homeschooling or something like that were to be, to kind of ebb, then that could also change things.
Follow-up question on the multipliers. How does these numbers that we're seeing compare to other areas like in Hendricks County, Hamilton County? Just wondering if the demographics and the family sizes, if there's any differences.
There is. It can vary quite a bit. And so that the shape of that curve is almost always the same, but the numbers can be quite a bit different. And so in some, let's say, northern suburbs of Indianapolis, some of the corporations working up there, it can almost be like one student per unit. I've worked in some areas that are not in suburban Indianapolis, and it can be, quite a bit lower than what you have here. And so I would say, some of the, some suburban areas are going to see, the schools are really everything, right? And so that's what you'll see the higher multipliers in some of those areas. Those are the big draw there. So you can see those numbers fluctuate quite a bit.
I think this has been great information for us as we try to think about the future for us. One thing that we did talk about in our sidebar was the Needham Web. That was purposeful. If you remember redistricting, we purposely said, listen, we know the growth's going to come up here, and so when you see those numbers, the redistricting actually did what we thought it was going to do. We put them back in Creekside, put them back in Needham because of that, and so we'll continue to monitor that. But I think this study does tell us kind of what we thought, where our growth was going to occur, and kind of where we need to continue to move forward. And just to reiterate again, the baseline is what we should look at for staffing needs over the next several years, and hybrid is if we were looking at future construction. Is that correct?
That's my recommendation, for sure. Yeah, and so when I was looking at this and kind of did some preliminary projections, because we just got the new data for the new school year here, and those kindergarten numbers are low, and it's because of those I think those birth trends, like I said, and so I would expect for them to continue to be low over the next couple of years, because especially you're going to start having that there was a real decline in births in 2020, the pandemic here, and so that cohort's going to be coming through here in the next couple of years, and so I would say over the next couple of years I would almost be undershooting. That's kind of what I was looking at there. Yeah.
Dr. Clendini, if you would, on slide 23, where we talk about the projections by each of the schools, if we could add, just for a reminder for us, what is the total allocation allocation for each of those schools. So I know Union, where the projection is 211, that's above the capacity.
What we can do.
Right? So that would just help us as we talk to those numbers.
We can bring that back to everyone in the near future.
Okay, thank you.
Well, great to be with you all tonight. Thanks.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Okay, we'll move along to the current curricular reimbursements.
Okay, that's my agenda item. I just wanted to kind of give the board an idea of what was submitted to the state. If you recall, the governor mandated that parents would not pay any textbook or consumable fees. So we had to submit our numbers, our student counts, and the total costs for each of those grades. And we had a total student count of 4,844. We spent a little bit over $1 million, which is a per student cost of close to $214. And the state will be reimbursing us at a rate of $151. That was the estimate anyway. So that provides a deficit of almost $63 per student and a total deficit of $300,000. So this year, Matt was able to be awarded a grant that's going to cover the Chromebooks for us. So that will cover our deficit for this year. But ongoing, this will have to be folded into the operational budget. Any questions on that? This is about where we thought we were going to land, so thank you.
Just an additional bit of information. Ms. Gross is also on a subcommittee with State House Counsel with CFOs looking at budget opportunities. So this is going to be something we continue to bring forth. Brooke sits on one for curriculum, and I sit one on policy. But this is an area that we really need to address. When I talked to some of the state reps a couple months ago, they, in many ways, thought they were just voting for textbooks. They did not realize the fees and everything else that was going in to incur this cost. I will tell you, I think out of the governor's office, and maybe Mr. Young knows more than I do, but I think the governor's office thought they're going to pay for everything, and that's what we've done. And I do think that will continue. So we'll continue to focus on our end. But $300,000, that's, we're talking 4 teachers that we're not going to be able to hire or in order to accommodate this shift. And we just saw the enrollment, what's going to happen. So those are some things that we need to continue to advocate for. And I'm glad that these two are helping in that conversation because their voice will carry.
Okay. Thank you, Tina. The Johnson County Public Library update.
Hello. Library Director for Johnson County Public Library. Everybody awake? I'm here with some board members that you have appointed. Kirk Bixler is here. He's going to say a few words on what the board is working on, and Leanne Ecker is here, also from the middle school teacher as well. She didn't have far to come to the meeting tonight. Also here with me is Colleen Kincaid. She's our development coordinator at JCPL, one of our newer employees. So I've invited her along. And we're just going to share with you some updates. So I'll let Kirk talk for a second, and I'll give you our program guide for winter.
Okay, thank you for letting us take a few moments tonight. I'd like to start off just with our feasibility study. JCPL has been working on a feasibility study since last spring, and this is going to provide our board with options for future major renovation and then slight expansions to the White River branch, and then further in the future to the Franklin branch. To guide this process, we've been working with Luminat to gain a sense of direction. And this organization has led some visioning sessions, and they were conducted with the library board, with the staff, and then also with the public. And these have helped us gain some insights into what some of our space changes might be, and also our programmatic goals to meet the needs of our future. So we will ask the county council's approval in early 2025 for approval for this. And then we'd hope to see construction process begin sometime in late 2026 or early 27. Okay, after the White River project is funded and nearly paid off, then we'll be working on getting approval for the Franklin branches improvements. Just keep in mind, both buildings, they will be 40 years old in 2028. So for buildings these days, that's kind of getting on there a little bit. So we're seeing some needs for improvements. The last major structural improvements, in White River Branch, we had a major HVAC upgrade about 10 years ago, a new roof about 5 years ago. And then Franklin, we had sections of the roof replaced about 2 years ago, and then some minor HVAC upgrades just this past year. One of the other things that we've been looking at recently too is finalizing our 2024 to 2028 strategic plan. And when this is approved by the board, it's going to guide our organization in regard to some of our customer experiences, community engagement, outreach, and programming. It's also going to include a technology plan for JCPL, as well as document our desire to partner with area educational institutions to provide free access of information.
That leads right into me, where I tell you all about the free access to information your Johnson County Public Library card offers. So Natalie showed the first screen. There are 3 library districts in Johnson County, and Franklin Schools is in our district, so we love to have you guys. First off, we've been fine-free for almost 2 years now, so that's reducing barriers to a lot of families who live in Johnson County, so that they can come to the library and not worry about, all of their books being 3 days late anymore. So we're doing great with that. Some other free or no cost or low cost services we provide, of course, Wi-Fi both inside and outside the building, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We provide free scanning and free faxing service, also free notary. So folks can come make an appointment at the library, and then we have very low cost printing, including color printing for those school projects. And if kids really need a color print and they don't have a quarter, please come and have them talk to the staff. They will make sure their homework is done. I'm going to zoom through these slides. I know you have a lot on your calendar tonight, so I know Natalie has a copy of this and can share these with you. And you can also, there's tons of folks here who know me that can reach out and have any questions you might have. So we have a page on our website called Discover Your Career Path, and it's geared for folks who are looking for jobs right out of high school. And it gives lots of free and very low-cost opportunities, apprenticeships to skilled trades, to medical fields, to manufacturing jobs here in Johnson County, and we partner with Aspire Johnson County on that info page. Also for students, particularly high school, we have tons of online resources. We have AP readiness videos, and Learning Express Library is one of the best test prep. It's free. You can practice for the SAT, the ACT, all sorts of tests that your students may be needing practice on. We have lots of other things, including a driving test practice. Our Learning Express Library, here's the slide that really talks about what your particularly high school and some middle school students could really take advantage of just with their library card. You can also print out tests and write them out if you don't have internet access at home or something like that, or you're definitely able to come in and use them in the library. Continuing education for folks of all ages, the things that are on this slide are geared for probably high school and up. We have LinkedIn Learning, which used to be called lynda.com. You get that free with your library card. Literally thousands of courses that are taught that can help folks with Microsoft questions with photography, web design, things like that. And then we have a sort of kind of feel your way into college courses called Gale courses. They're 6-week courses taught by a professor, and you earn a certificate at the end of it. And for our new learners, if you have any folks in your school district whose families need, either the adults need help with basic education or with English, our Adult Learning Center has lots of resources for you. You can talk with a real person, get some tutoring for adults. We have something called Transparent Language, which I think a lot of your students will be interested in. Just so many, dozens and dozens of languages you can learn. And then we have musical video, like if you want to learn how to play piano, guitar, ukulele, you learn from experts through videos with ArtistWorks. And then we just added creative bugs for all the crafters, because tons of videos you can watch and learn how to make a bracelet or something. Our ebooks, which are electronic books, and all of our audio materials and movies. We have tons of apps you can add to your phone devices or use on a computer, and just literally hundreds of thousands of materials that are accessible just with your library card. And then beyond books, we have something called the Library of Things, and these are the things, if you haven't been in the library a while, this is something you'll walk in, you're like, wow, I had no idea that you could get a metal detector at the library with your library card. Did you know you could check out Eiteljorg museum passes for a family of 4, or the Indiana State Museum? You can check out passes to the pool this summer at Franklin Aquatic Center. These are things you can check out with your library card. Also, Enchroma glasses. Those are if you're colorblind, it helps correct your vision. And pickleball racket. I mean, just so many things. You'll just have to come and check out our cool stuff. And then for the high school kids, we have Project Prom. Start checking our website probably in February, early March. We'll be doing a great big, we give away hundreds of prom dresses to keep the cost down for your folks. We also have suits and accessories. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to ask, or you can email me later.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thanks.
The high school virtual pilot program.
It was mentioned earlier, I've got about 40 slides I think I want to go through. I've got 4. But just jumping into that, it was mentioned earlier in the meeting about something we may pilot at the high school we've been working on for a while. Our goal is really just through our strategic plan, individual student growth, trying to address probably needs the building has had, but as we've been developing our programs, we know that students have different needs in different settings, and so they don't all necessarily learn in the same environment. We worked with that for a long time, but as not only as a building need, but as families even look for the right atmosphere for their kid to go to school, we're looking at kind of growing all of those options. So really it's about trying to provide educational services, best placement for kids all across the building. So on the next slide, it's just, I'll go through real quickly on these. I don't really know when we started Franklin Academy. I can't even remember what year. I probably could have done the research on that. But quite a while ago, we started Franklin Academy. It's been run by Don Geisler in coordination with Mr. Martin, Scott Martin, and some other individuals that have been in there to help for quite a while. And that was kind of our first step into creating a different environment for students other than just what we kind of probably what we all knew is just going to school every day. And it really served as like a catch-all. Even though it was really designed for credit recovery, is what we kind of tried to hold true to, which is just students that are behind, or if they're out for some reason, they're coming in just trying to pick up classes online, maybe even some kind of hybrid model where they are in classes, but they're in there taking some classes as well. But it also picked up some behavioral issues, expulsions, different things. Over time, it just became this big catch-all for anybody that needed anything other than just being in the normal classroom every day. And it's not ideal to have, again, we've got the one general education, standard education, traditional education, whatever you want to call it, environment And then as we pull away just to that other Franklin Academy environment, it's not good to catch all of those kids in there either. So on the next slide, within the last couple years, we created more of our alternative education services. So that's Shelby Murphy. That has picked up a different, so we're already starting to pull some of those students out of Franklin Academy into a setting that's more designed for their either academic or even behavioral needs. But you can see on each of those, and I don't know if you have a copy of it in front of you there if you're looking at it, but you can kind of see underneath what we've started to piece that out a little bit. With Shelby Murphy in our alternative education setting, they can work on some more of those behavioral needs, where really then Franklin Academy would be a little bit more of credit recovery, what we designed it for. At one point we had some adult education going on in there. Somewhat of a social, I wouldn't call social intervention, so not so much behavioral, but like maybe there is some stress around going through into a big classroom, into a really big school, and trying to get your education that way to where either partial day or full day they might go into Franklin Academy. Not so much behavioral, but just to have that setting, to be able to maybe focus a little more, take some classes a different way, where our alternative education setting really is more behavioral. So that picks up a lot of our expulsions, our transitions back into the building, and somewhat social in that as well. We've been doing that for a couple of years now, and really trying to get to what is this third slide, which is just providing even a bigger spectrum of options, again, not only for us, but for our families. We sat up here and talked about enrollment and what impacts enrollment figures. We have families that want an online setting, or they want some version of an online setting, or they want to try that or do different things. So this would help our building in providing all of these settings for us. So as we work with kids and we find out, okay, this setting isn't working, this setting isn't working. So we would have those options as we kind of work with families, but also if families decide that's what they want, can we provide some of those options? So currently, if a family just wants to go, let's say fully online, like we just won't be in the building. We have not had that option for families. So there would be families heading elsewhere for that kind of option. What is kind of designed here, if you can follow it, is if we work all the way from what would be on the left-hand side of the screen is Indiana Online Academy is an option. I don't know how much you want to go through some of those options or what you're familiar with, but I don't have to go through all the details. If you have questions, I can answer those. But if a student were to go fully online, we do not have the structure set up to provide out of our building all day, every day with the resources to do fully online, but we can partner with Indiana Online Academy where we do have students, as they've left over time, say, well, I would like to get a Franklin High School diploma. I'd like to go through graduation. I'd like to stay in Franklin, but if we don't offer that, then we can't provide that. We have to say, well, you just have to go elsewhere to get that done. And this would range everywhere from then fully out of the building all the way into all of these different transitions. So the second one you see, I guess, as you swing around kind of the lower, the non-traditional online, our partnership with Edmentum and Courseware, providing CTE classes, graduation pathways, those kinds of things would open up the door to us being able to come up with modified schedules to where a student could potentially spend some of their day out of the building and then be coming into our building just to check in on progress. To me, that's ideal. Anything that doesn't have some progress monitoring with it, I think is very high risk. It doesn't mean that students and families can't do that, but it's pretty high risk. We've seen that. They go fully out on their own. We found if that kind of discipline isn't set in other settings, rarely is that option the setting at which, like, oh, I'm going to become fully responsible for everything and it's going to go well. So the non-traditional online setting would be anywhere from 1 to 5 days. That's where we're kind of working on schedules. How much do you need to come into the building and check in? And work with our staff to make sure that you're keeping up. What classes are you taking? So it would really be more of a monitored online setting in our building through something like Courseware and Edmentum. Then we would also provide what we'd call a traditional schedule of online, which would just be our regular bell schedule where students have the opportunity to come in there. So we'd run a 7-period day. Every period of the day, there's staff in there. Students would come in to maybe just pick up a single course. maybe to pick up a CTE class, maybe it is credit recovery, but there would be a lot of different reasons at which they would do that, but that would follow the normal Bell schedule, which is, we do some of this right now, but like I said, it's kind of all thrown in a catch-all, and you've got somebody like Dawn and people like that are just trying to manage all of that. We'd still have our swinging all the way around their alternative education program, which again, that kind of works on some of more of the behavioral transitions. And then that branch you see off of there is, as we're seeing it in education across, there are still students that no matter what setting we put them in, they're struggling to be successful because the behaviors don't allow them to in almost any setting. With 30 kids, one-on-one, all of these kinds of things provide struggles. So that would just be a branch off of that, which isn't necessarily connected to the online, but the resources through Edminum and courseware, something Apex would provide an opportunity for a restorative behavior technician or someone to have the opportunity to work with kids. If we can't get the social skills, behavioral skills under control, then we really struggle to get any of the academic work done at all. So I think long-term providing all of these options helps our teachers, it helps our building, it helps our families in our community, it helps keep people in our community when we provide all of those options. And a full spectrum like this would allow us to just transition kids. If they're not being successful in one, can we if they decide to go fully online and it's not being successful and we're monitoring there, because we would have somebody monitoring their progress there, could we transition them back into the building where they're with us a few days a week online to say, okay, we need to pull you back in, let's monitor you more frequently. If that's not being successful, let's try to get back into like a 7-period day where we can even provide some more structure to you, and you could provide some transitions in and out of this program as we see necessary. Right now, we just throw it all together and try to do the best that we can. I think it would provide a lot of options for most everyone involved. So I don't know if you have any questions about.
But just do you have the staff to handle this today? What would it take to get us to this model?
To the point we've been at now, we pretty much have worked with whatever staff we have, and we've just shifted people around with limited ads. There would be an ad here. I also think that the potential for a program like this to do something like more 7 through 12 or 6 through 12, I think it will take a person somewhere in here I think we have enough to cover most of them. I think probably one full to take over one of these programs would probably be necessary to do that. But what it would provide is people looking over the programs and being able to really focus in on how do I make this part of the program really successful, which is what has happened with our alternative ed program. As we've been able to parse it out and put people fully under control of those pieces, they've gone really well. So yeah, I do think that would be, and potentially with some assisting staff as well. I don't know that we've really dug into that, but we've talked about that a little bit. But it will probably, in my eyes, a certified staff member somewhere in there would be needed.
There's no question this model worked for my family, right? I can only speak for my family because my daughter wouldn't have graduated for something like this. So I fully support it. Is there anything you need from the board to continue this?
Probably a staff would be an ad. I think we'd have the space. I know we have the qualified people to do most, if not all of this, either in our building or in our corporation. Assisting staff is tough right now in all places, so just like restorative behavior, finding people that can do that kind of stuff might be difficult to find those kinds of positions, but I think it's just the support of the program at some point.
Yeah. It's
communicating out to the community why we have these things and that they're available now. I mean, I think we will have to get some communication out if we were to go this route that, hey,
right.
If you left us, we have these resources here. We have these programs available to you. That would be a good support by the board and the district.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mr. Wurtson, you also took the first step tonight when you voted to approve the pilot for the courseware and Edminum software, because that's going to be our backbone for the curriculum. And Mr. House has done a very nice job of being delicate about this, but we're gonna need staff. There is no doubt about that we're gonna need some additional people, and we need a champion. He's done a great job of projecting inside the building and out what we need to do. We're gonna need some champions here to monitor this and make sure this happens. We spend a lot of time kind of in that non-traditional online is the space that they're gonna focus on. How do we get all those parts and pieces? So it really will be a staffing conversation. And we're gonna pilot, I think, this next semester with the courseware, and then I think you'll look for us to come back probably in our February meeting when we have the financial conversation about next steps for us, because we would like to start this in the next school year.
Okay, great, awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to action items. Are there any public comments?
Hello, my name is Jason Scott. I am kind of focused on H225 on the second readings policy for the school board rules and regulations. When I saw this on the last school board meeting on the first reading, I was very, very concerned. I had debated, prayed, and to see how I should reply to this, because it kind of hits home. About a year ago, year and a half ago, you guys removed the end of meeting public comments. Something I used to use when I would see something, especially, I understand there's a window there or whatever. I think it needs to be returned, especially since there's a line there that says that at his or her sole discretion, the board president may permit public comments on issues not listed. There's not an opportunity right now in the layout of the agenda to do that. But I also know the concern that came from was because of the issues we had with people outside of the school system using it to do political comments and things that was going on at the time that really you guys could not do anything about, neither could the administrative board. It's something that they should have been petitioning other people. So there's kind of a thing that I'm looking at. I'm glad to see that there is a movement to, yes, the core structure is 30 minutes, but then if it's a bigger topic, then there will be a possibility for the board to allow for more. That was my biggest concern at the last meeting. But I see where you are pointing out very clearly, kind of like biblically in a way, that if you have a problem with a certain subject, certain things, find the people that you need to talk to first. Kind of, you made the comment here in one of the paragraphs about if it's curriculum, please contact the superintendent and the principal, maybe even the teacher. I will tell you, I have an issue with the 8th grade curriculum. My daughter's getting ready to go into that. We may have to homeschool because of it. But Dr. Worland has done her best, but the teachers that was there last year when my son was in 8th grade, they wouldn't reply back. We had issues with replies. So I never had an opportunity to bring it to you. I had to do it off the record, after the meeting, things like that, of things I was having issues with. Especially with my son, who is very low ability and wasn't able to deal with the subject that was being presented in the first semester of 8th grade reading, nor should we really have that subject when we're talking about violence. That's another, just an example. So we need to have that written like we do on the website for the school board meetings, that, hey, if you have an issue, here's how you go about before you present it to the board. So that at the end, unfortunately, I may have to add some work to Robin of, is this person actually connected to, or hey, is this discussion that needs to be done beforehand, or has it been done beforehand, before they present it to the things. There's ways we can, where a public comment off the topic, off the agenda, can still be presented. Something I want you to consider, please.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Approval of the Clever Dogs website development.
Yes, I was able to have Roger look through that contract. He suggested the addition of 3 paragraphs, which Clever Dogs added to the contract, and you should have in front of you now.
No, I-
Last month, we asked that, for you to review the contract.
I did.
So she confirmed that you did, and that you asked for a clause to be included
did.
into there. So she said, and it's all included now, what's.
It is.
Okay.
So we're good to go? We're good.
President Nelson, I need to also, HubSpot is going to be the content provider, I believe, of this. And I just need, when we do our disclosures for conflicts, my son actually works for HubSpot. He lives in Seattle, so I really know nothing, about but I do need to declare that he does work for HubSpot in this space. And it went on our documents, we didn't have that. So I'm just declaring that at this time, just so you all know.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Move for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And then the policy, second reading.
Thank you, President Nelson. At this time, there have been no additions other than the present comment from Mr. Scott about public comment. I do understand what he's talking about. We can continue to look at ways to engage the community in what we're doing, but all other items on here, I believe we should, our recommendation is to approve the new policies from Church, Churchill, and Antrim.
Okay, anybody have any comments or questions about the policies? Nope. Okay,
I'll move for approval.
Second.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, motion passes. We will move to discussion items. The Earlywood dissolution document.
Yes, I was hoping to actually give the physical document to you, but we don't have that. But there are a couple items I do want you to be aware of that are coming to you next month. One is that we've engaged Mr. Young to review the document. There was a clause regarding the dissolution of the property, and in that property, as you know, it resides in our school district, and so part of the agreement is going to say that it's going to become part of Franklin Schools. In that document, there was, Howie says, I came up with the value of that. We had to have 2 appraisals, and that is by state law. So when you get the document, you're going to see that the value is the average of those 2 documents. In addition, Mr. Young did articulate that there was a need for a deed search, or what's the legal name for that? Is that
Title insurance.
title insurance?
Make sure that we get a piece of property free and clear from any liens or encumbrances. I don't know what the future is going to bring, but if there's going to be construction on the site, and it's going to be necessary to, if you will, mortgage the property to secure the loan, you certainly want a clean piece of property. And even if there's not, you want a clean piece of property.
So that will also be part of that document. And the last thing, we are becoming the trustee of Earlywood as it dissolves. Ms. Gross will be our representative as the trustee holder. When you see the documents, all information will, mainly it's fiduciary, but she is listed as the person that will oversee in the business office the trustee responsibilities. We are bringing on additional staff members, and we will have that action in early January. We did issue letter of intent to employ. The next step is actually bring them onto our staff so they can resign from Earlywood. And that's going to take place over the next 8 weeks. So those are the highlights. Mr. Young, like I said, has reviewed the document. There's one other district that wanted to look at it before we get it out to everybody, and that's why it's not here tonight.
Right, and there is one more document that you're going to see, and it's a separate standalone document concerning the transfer of the real estate. Because this is a conveyance, and to some extent a sale, of the real estate from one governmental entity to another, the laws on purchasing and selling real estate don't strictly apply, because it's not selling to a private entity or buying from a private entity. It's between 2 governmental entities. So the law gives those governmental entities a a great deal of flexibility to craft a transfer that best meets their needs. However, the law also requires, though, for that to go forward, each governmental entity must adopt a substantially similar resolution stating the terms of the sale and authorizing the sale or the purchase, depending on which governmental entity you are. So that document has not yet been prepared. We are working on that. So that's another unique document that's unique to Franklin that will be generated in connection with this, that the other schools will not be necessarily a party to. Although the attorneys for Earlywood may want each of the member corporations to adopt that resolution, I'll leave that up to their attorney to decide how to do it. I'm just telling you, you're going to see a separate standalone resolution or a resolution that basically sets forth the terms of the sale because the law requires you to do that.
So, Mr. Young, in that line, is Earlywood is dissolved, can a charter school, can they come in and say, we want to buy it for that $1 before we do the transitions? Before we do the sale?
They certainly can. I don't think they're entitled to demand that, though,
Okay.
because the building will continue to be, the property will continue to be held by and used for public school purposes.
Okay.
And let me go a little bit more in depth on why this sale is not, doesn't exactly follow the law. The law doesn't anticipate reduction in price in fair market value to cover the cost of a demolition of the building. If this were being sold to a private entity, the school would have to sell it for no less than an amount equal to the average of the two appraisals, with no further reduction for demolition, site conditions, or anything else, because it's assumed that those constraining factors are included in the appraisals themselves. Okay? So that's what's unique about this. We're establishing a purchase price, a gross purchase price of the average of the two appraisals. The net purchase price is that number less the anticipated cost of demolition. That's what makes it different.
So you will have that document in front of you in December. It will also be listed as a discussion item there again, and then in January we will vote to dissolve Earlywood officially. Thank you.
Okay, item B, the FMX. Mr. Sprout?
That technology. For a number of years, we've used SchoolDude as our management for facilities, help desk tickets, maintenance tickets, and Mr. Betts came in and said, how well do you love SchoolDude? And I'm like, not really. And he said, we should do something about that. So together we created a committee to evaluate our current applications and those that compete. This is our 2-month process, and initially I'll present tonight. Be glad to answer any questions. Next month, if everything proceeds as expected, we'll request permission to purchase with the FMX. But we created a committee. Those sitting around the table are important in making those decisions. I want to thank Mr. Betts, Mrs. Sharon Moran, Mr. Kirby, who helped with the IT tickets. Mr. Corliss, you're familiar with the high school and all the facilities there. And Mr. Martin also helped with that, Jay Gapehart on the maintenance side, Mrs. Dorsey with the help desk, and then Patty Kinsey with transportation, and last but not least, Mr. Zook with his new role. So as we took this on, we came up with criteria. You're familiar with this process. I use an AHP, and we come up with the criteria. I won't read off each one, but I will tell you 71% of it either had to do with a process or accountability. So as we look at managing our facilities, whether we put our floor plans in and be able to locate certain items and manage those, it was all about process and facility. We did narrow the field down from 5 different companies and competitors. After a few phone calls, we narrowed it down to 2 companies. We went with Incident IQ and FMX. As you're familiar with, the next step in our process is to use a PU diagram and measure those out. It allows us to give real numbers to the criteria that we used. And FMX is the recommendation. The Pew diagram gave them a value of 282. The next one was quite a bit lower at 139. So FMX is definitely the better fit for Franklin Community Schools. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Mr. Young is continuing to work on the agreement, and we'll bring that back next month, if all continues to go well. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, renaming of facilities. Mr. Doty.
Thank you, Mrs. Nelson and school board. Appreciate the time tonight. Over the last several months, we've had some formal requests brought to me by some community members for potential to name our two areas at our high school, naming our facilities. One of those would be Bob Hossman, former wrestling coach and teacher at our high school, and the other would be for Rusty Hughes, who is our current tennis coach, has been the girls and boys tennis coach for the past 35 years, 30 plus years. I think we all know both of those individuals. We either have a personal relationship or our kids had them in class, at some point. So the formal process came to me from some individuals, whether they coached with them or also worked with them. And then it came through my office, Dr. Clendenning, and then the athletic council that Mr. Lamb sits on. So that process is how we got to today. You see the letters that I gave to you. They're on the board agenda, but even though we know who those two individuals are, I'd like for you to listen to some of their accomplishments. For Bob, he's an educator and coach at Franklin Community High School for 1986 to 2019. In his time as varsity wrestling coach, his teams won 20 Johnson County championships, 17 mid-state championships, 19 sectional championships, 11 regionals, and the team was the 2013 IHS WCA state dual champions. In 2013, they were runner-up in 2014. He had the individuals that he coached 48 state qualifiers. 26 of those were state place winners. And then he also coached the 2014 IHSA Mental Attitude Award winner, which is Skylar Likens. Coach Hossman was also inducted into the Indiana High School Wrestling Coaches Association Hall of Fame in 2007. As a teacher at FCHS, Mr. Hossman had a way of building relationships, and I think we would all agree with that, in his own way. With each student in his class and everyone he came across, relationships matter, and we know that. Relationships truly matter, and his ability to create a fun and engaging atmosphere is what made him a beloved teacher by students throughout his 4 decades at Franklin Community High School. So that's Bob Hossman, and I could go on and on. I'm sure I'm leaving some accolades out, but I'll turn to Rusty Hughes. 36 years as varsity head coach at Franklin Community High School. He's had 433 wins, 224 losses. His teams, 8 conference titles, 5 sectional titles, 3 regionals, 1 semi-state, which was just this past year, and then 1 Final Four state finalist team with that record of 26-1. He has coached 1 state finalist individual in 1993, 1 state champion doubles team in 1994. He's coached 5 first-team All-State doubles teams, 3 second-team All-State doubles teams, 2 first-team All-State singles players, and 1 third-team All-State singles player. Coached 20-plus All-State honorable mention players and 15 girls who played on the North and South senior All-Star team. He's coached 90 players who have gone on to coach at various levels from NCAA Division I all the way down to the middle school programs. He's been the head coach at Indiana All-Star South team for 3 years, the district coach of the year 4 times, and an 8-time conference coach of the year. His impact is felt widely around Franklin community, and both these gentlemen, I believe, are deserving. So I know it's a discussion item. I hope that you move it to an approval action item in December, and hope that I can come back and seek that approval in December. Happy to answer any questions.
One question, you and I talked about this. The formal recognition, if it goes through for Mr. Hossman, is going to be sometime early in the winter. Is that correct?
That would be correct. My hope would be in January 20th is when we actually have the Bob Hossman Classic, which is the Super Six that he had for years and years, and that's hosted. We host that every year. It's in January, and that's when I would want to do that ceremony. And then likewise for Rusty, that would be as soon as we come back from spring break would be when our first girls' home tennis match would be, and we'd do it at that time as well.
So that's the timeline that we would use for the recognition of both of these if they move forward next month.
Have any discussion been made with either of the candidates?
I did talk to both candidates. I called Bob and Rusty came into my office and I met with them. I asked them if, for their approval first, if they were okay with this.
That's where I was going to go.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and they both, as you can imagine, kind of downplayed it.
Of course.
They were very humble, said, if this is what you want to do, that's fine, that kind of thing. But I will, even though they downplayed it, they were very gracious and
Okay, cool.
That's
Great.
awesome.
really respectful of it, so. Yeah. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on discussion items? Okay, we'll move to any board comments.
Well, listening to Mr. Doty just list the accolades of both those coaches. We've just been very lucky to have them in our district. And it's sad that they have to retire at some point, but we're glad that we can do this for them.
I'd like to add, earlier when we went through the personnel reports, we talked about Doug Dickerson was retiring or leaving Franklin. I just want to highlight again, Doug has done so much for us through the COVID, through the pandemic, still getting our bus routes together. He changed the software in the midst of that, right, to help the communication with the parents. I just really want to say thank you from the board for all the work that he's done, all the stress that we've put him under, that I know that job is probably the burden that he's had to undertake with that, and then just the shortage of drivers. And, he's always come on top for us, so I want to thank him for that effort. Wish him all the best.
Thank you, Andy. Any administrative comments?
At the last meeting, the board approved ACH payments, and Trustee Lamb asked what the vendor would actually see when we notified them of that transaction. I put that in November 3rd Friday notes, but it's pretty much like the invoice number, the amount, in a description. So I assume you asked that question to make sure we tie the receivable to the payment, and I think they're going to have enough information to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, calendar of events.
And just a couple of highlights. Wednesday, we're back in person for coffee with the superintendent. We're going to have Carolyn Ray there, as well as Carly and Katie, and we're going to talk about literacy and what we're doing at the elementary level. And then senior projects up at the high school on the 21st. And we do welcome the public. I know Mr. A House has got a group of community members coming in to help judge with that. So in the future, if you have interest in that, please reach out to Mr. A House, and we can get you to the right people to do that. Also on the 21st tonight, we are going to be honoring Dean LaPlante with induction into the Franklin Community High School Alumni Hall of Fame. And just a reminder, this is for one of our guiding principles. Dean has done very well for himself and very philanthropic, giving back to the community in both an individual student growth and collaboration. He's going to be highlighted for that. So at 5 o'clock, we'll have the induction, and then we'll go down to the athletic office in that area where we're going to have a reception for Mr. Planup, and then we will introduce him at the basketball game. And that game is also an Indian Creek game, boys and girls. And who plays first? Is it the boys? The boys play first at 6 o'clock, and the girls will follow. And so we'll introduce him in the middle of that. So hopefully everyone can mark their calendar for that. And then we have at My FCS Academy on November 29th, and we are at Webb Elementary, and we're going to hear from the elementary perspective what's going on. And then also the Christmas programs are before us. The 30th and 1st are the choir programs, and the next week is the band program. So one of the things we've been talking about, we traditionally usually go to the choir program. We were talking about this year going to the band concert. So if anyone, we'll send out information tomorrow. If we could all go and support them, that would be great. But we'll look forward to that just great opportunity to celebrate the season and with their kids and what's going on. And so please mark your calendars and think about that. And I think with that, that will be all on calendar of events.
Okay, that concludes our November 13th meeting. Thank you.